Hi, everyone. This is Lawrence Watkins, and welcome to the Financial Juneteenth 5. These are my 5 most interesting articles as it relates to Black finance, wealth, and business for today, November 9th, 2020. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first article today comes from the New York Times, and it says, "A long time coming, Black women celebrate Harris's ascension." As Kamala Harris heads towards the highest levels of power, many rejoiced and saw her achievement as a particularly poignant reminder to Black girls that anything is possible. So the article started out with a woman by the name of Yolanda Lattimore, who is out of Macon, Georgia, who owns an advertising agency. And she says, at a time when a range of racial and gender barriers have been shattered by earlier trailblazers, Ms. Lattimore said that Ms. Harris's ascension to the highest levels of power was particularly important, giving Black girls everywhere a reminder that anything is possible. Here's a direct quote from Ms. Lattimore. She says, "I know that it won't solve all problems, but it definitely will raise the spirit and the drive of Black women. Just so glad to see something like this actually happen." There are other people who have chimed in as well, many prominent Black women from all around the country. One notable person is Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta, Georgia. She says, "This has been a long time coming, a woman of color, an HBCU representative." She goes on to say, "This is a particularly poignant moment. Communities of color have been figuratively, and physically under attack. And I think that representation is what this country needs. It is more important than ever that we have representation at the White House at the table." Mayor London Breed, she's the mayor of San Francisco, and she echoed this sentiment of Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. "It's pretty incredible. And I am so excited, not just because Kamala Harris is my friend, but because of what she represents for women in general and what this means in terms of our role in politics and how women, especially women of color, are being taken seriously." Carol Porter, who was a close friend, childhood friend of Ms. Harris, so Vice President Harris, also has some things to say. They were bused together back in 1970 at an elementary school in Berkeley, California, that was desegregated by busing. And now Ms. Porter is 56 years old and a healthcare information technology team leader who lives in Richmond, California. She said about the moment, "I started to cry. I immediately thought of her mother, Shyamala. I assume that's how you pronounce her name, but please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I thought of the West Berkeley Flatlands, this small immigrant, people of color, red line neighborhood we grew up in." Let's see. So then she goes on to talk about that. She thought about Shyamala going to work as a researcher and being denied opportunities, and many, many more things as it relates to discrimination also. So from a childhood friend perspective, she just thought throughout the years in terms of how they actually grew up together and what this moment means for them. Carol Mosley Braun also had some comments. She was the first African-American woman elected to the U.S. Senate. She found herself making a mental list of the Black women who had come before Ms. Harris. They were Black women who conquered first, like Sojourner Truth, Shirley Chisholm, Yvonne Brathwaite Burke, Barbara Jordan. And then she began to pray. "I thank the Lord for this dream come true. I believe Joe Biden is exactly what the country needs to heal, and Kamala, as his second in command, is exactly the right person to help him. There were so many women who paved the way for this to happen, so many who sacrificed, so many shoulders." She goes on to state, Ms. Carol Mosley Braun, she says, "She is going to have to navigate the cult of Donald Trump, which remains in the Senate. The word collegiality no longer applies. It's not even something people aspire to. Joe and Kamala have to heal the wounds and make people on the other side feel like they are being heard." And that's the last major quote that I wanted to share in this article. Congratulations to President-elect Joe Biden and I guess, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris as well. So we can celebrate this moment, but they have a difficult road ahead of them, especially as it relates to what Ms. Kara Mosley Braun stated at the end of this article as well. The next article today comes from Inside Higher Education. So Inside Higher Ed states Biden's victory could be transformative. So they're really just talking about the higher education industry. Joe Biden's apparent election as president could pave the way for a dramatic shift in higher education policies, possibly making tuition free for many seeking a college education and wiping away the debt of millions of people paying back student loans. Expected. So those are some of the things that we can expect. Also expected to be gone after the Trump years is a Trump administration policy on Title IX and the education amendments of 1972 that women's advocates have warned would discourage victims of sexual assault and harassment on campuses from coming forward. But likely experiencing angst are for-profit colleges on the flip side, who are expected to face much tougher scrutiny and the return of Obama administration regulations that were wiped away by the U.S. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. Also, the people who are probably the biggest winner are community colleges. Not only is Jill Biden, a former professor at North Virginia Community College, married to the president-elect, but Joe Biden has promised to make community colleges free, providing additional funding to help more students graduate and provide incentives to states to provide wraparound service, particularly for veterans, single parents, low-income students, and students of color. David Baime, I'm not exactly sure how to say his name, the Senior Vice President for Government Relations and Policy Analysis for the American Association of Community Colleges, he says, Dr. Biden has been a positive force for community colleges by helping people understand better some of the essential work that we do. Certainly, it would be good to have someone who understands that in the White House. Terrell Hartle of the American Council on Education's Senior Vice President of Government Relations, so he's a top lobbyist. I like the second part of this quote. I didn't highlight it here, but I think this was more poignant. He says some of his ideas, like doubling Pell Grants, are easily implemented and will enjoy universal popularity. Others, like free college proposal, will be politically controversial and more complicated to design. Yet others, like large-scale student loan forgiveness, are potentially quite expensive. So that came in terms of just talking about just some of the challenges it's going to face, especially if there's a Republican-controlled Congress moving forward. If the Republicans keep control, it will make it far harder for the Biden administration to advance successfully some of their major legislative initiatives like free college. They will certainly advance these ideas, but whether they can get them enacted is a far more difficult task if the Republicans control the upper chamber. Even if Democrats are able to win both runoff races, there will likely be a tension between the moderate and liberal wings of the party over how far to go on proposals like making not only community colleges, but public four-year institutions and HBCUs free, an idea that could cost more than $1 trillion. All right, and I think that's the last major quote I have from that article, but definitely read this if you are worried about your student loan payments in terms of what may be coming down the pike. Also, some of these just initiatives and ideas that the Biden-Harris administration have as they are coming into office coming in January. The next article comes from the Wall Street Journal. It says, "The battle to keep America's black banks alive." There are 18 Black-owned banks in the U.S., half that existed a decade and a half ago. A new movement is underway to help those that are left to survive and even thrive. A half century ago, the federal government set out to attack the racial wealth gap by supporting Black-owned banks. Policymakers hoped the banks would lend to Black communities sidelined by the mainstream financial system. But 5 decades of federal financial and regulatory support have failed to boost America's Black-owned banks. The majority have disappeared under the burden of source loan or soured loans, excuse me. Bigger competitors created by mergers and financial downturns that hit small lenders hard. 15 years ago, America had 36 Black owned banks, government data show. Now there are 18. All right, here's an interesting stat. In a FDIC survey found last year that 13.8% of Black households in America don't have bank accounts at all, compared with 5.4% of the overall population. The survey also found that 72.5% of all US households used bank credit last year, but just 52.5% of Black households. Now, a new generation of entrepreneurs, companies, and regulators are trying a different strategy. What's changing is they are promising to strengthen Black-owned banks by building up their capital with private investment and giving them new ways to earn money with hundreds of millions in big corporate deposits. Their hope is that this approach will ultimately improve Black communities' access to capital. So it goes on to talk about a few other things. So Black-owned banks have succeeded. Okay, here we go. So Black-owned banks have succeeded in making capital more widely available in the sense that they approve a higher percentage of Black applicants' loans than other banks. But their impact on the communities they serve is increasingly limited by their small size and often precarious financial standing. So basically, Black banks never get to the point to where they're too big to fail, like some of our other major financial institutions, and it's very difficult for them to compete. They talk about some of the specific and systemic reasons like all of this is happening. Black-owned banks often believe they can do a better job assessing the risk of Black borrowers, but they tend to make riskier loans due to their deliberate lending to consumers shut out by the mainstream banks. They also share many of the same problems afflicting small community banks: a limited number of branches, little money to invest in the type of mobile banking technology that might attract new customers, and an industry consolidation that increasingly puts more market share in the hands of mega banks like JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America. The total number of banks insured or supervised by the FDIC has declined by 45% since 2001, compared with a drop of 56% for the number of Black-owned banks over the same period. So there's consolidation going on industry-wide, but then also consolidation in banks going out of business for Black-owned banks as well at a much higher rate. Some big companies are trying to change the lopsided odds for Black-owned banks by becoming customers of the banks themselves. Most notably is companies like Netflix and PayPal. Netflix has committed $100 million to the effort, including $25 million to a community development nonprofit that will help deploy the funds via loans and deposits in Black-owned banks. PayPal recently deposited $50 million in Black-owned Optimus Bank in Columbia, South Carolina, as part of a $350 million push to support Black businesses, and Bank of America also bought a stake in the same lender. There is a quote here from a PayPal spokeswoman. She says, "Our goal is to have an impact on the financial health, access, and generational wealth creation for underrepresented minorities." Dominic Martin, I assume that's how you pronounce his name, the Optimus president, said that PayPal deposit allowed it to fund $40.5 million in loans through the Paycheck Protection Program, the federal government's coronavirus lifeline for small businesses. He says, "You cannot solve 400 years of disparity with a deposit, but it can create a movement." So that's the last major quote that I believe I want to share from this article. But I highly suggest that you read it. I'm going to skip over this piece about searching for the middle class, but it has some good information about America's biggest banks spend tens of billions of dollars a year of technology, and the middle class is really looking for something like that as they look for their banking institution for the future. But read this article. I believe it came out today in the Wall Street Journal or yesterday. I'm not exactly sure, but definitely it came out this or 2 days ago. Excuse me. So definitely read that whenever you have a moment. The next article today comes from Harvard Business School. And it states, even though this press release was released on October 23rd, it's been getting pub in magazines like Poets and Quants and also Yahoo Finance as well. But students pair with local Black-owned businesses in new MBA field course. Scaling Minority Businesses, a new field class in the elective curriculum this fall, aims Harvard Business School resources straight at Black-owned businesses in the greater Boston area. By pairing local businesses with MBA students as consultants, teaching relevant cases, and bringing in expert speakers, Professor Henry McGee, Jeff Busang, and Archie Jones hope to make a lasting difference in the fight for racial justice against systemic racism. There's a quote here from Professor McGee. I felt it was important that Harvard focus on how it could use its resources to engage with the Boston community in ways that would address the problems of racism and inequities. A lot of businesses have made commitments to address these issues. It's important that our educational institutions do so as well. One of the other instructors, Mr. Busgang, I think that's how you pronounce it. The HBS value proposition to our students is heavily focused on the network, and that network has yielded great results for all three of us alumni and faculty, but it's one that's obviously not everyone has access to. To be able to bring that network to bear for Black-owned businesses is pretty awesome. We hope that these businesses will benefit from this relationship not only over the course of this semester, but also beyond, and that we can create some connectivity with the Harvard community in general and the HBS community in particular to advance their knowledge, social capital, and eventually their access to financial capital. So 10 businesses include some of the largest minority-owned companies in Massachusetts, in industries ranging from real estate to construction to industrial packaging. So this class isn't for really small businesses per se in terms of like startups, that type of thing. It seems to be for businesses that have some type of established reputation that are looking to scale to the next level. Because if you have been following the FJT 5 segment, you'll notice that that's a common trend in talking about there are a lot of Black-owned businesses out there. The problem is they only have, one or two employees compared to, if you're able to scale a venture that could hire 100 or 500 different people, that has a much bigger impact on a particular community. Cruise Companies, a third-generation family business in the fields of construction, development, and management, is thrilled to participate. John Cruise, the president and CEO, has a quote here. Let me see. Let me highlight that real quick. We're at a pinnacle point in our companies, ready to market our firm for a lot of new growth, and therefore it was a natural fit. So then he goes on to talk about the importance of scaling the business as well. So check this out. This is directly from Harvard Business School, and this is, I guess, half press release, half article here, in regards to local Black-owned businesses for this new MBA field course. The last article today comes from the New York Times, and it's an opinion piece by Erin Aubrey Kaplan. And she says, Black empowerment outside the headlines. A quiet battle over retail space is a modern fight for the soul of Black Los Angeles. The battle is, okay, so they're talking about this battle. This battle is over redevelopment of the Crenshaw district, one of the last predominantly Black areas of Los Angeles. Crenshaw comprises both working class and historic middle class neighborhoods that sit about halfway between downtown and the ocean. Redevelopment wars date to 1992, when many structures there and in the neighboring South Central were burned or damaged during the unrest touched off by the acquittal of 4 police officers tried for the beating of Rodney King. The structure in question now is in Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza, a 40-acre mall that has been the center of economic aspirations in Crenshaw since the original 1947 open-air shopping center modernized and reopened as an indoor mall in 1988. The mall was not damaged in 1992, but has more or less struggled since, buffeted by two recessions, the collapse and consolidation of big retail, and general political lethargy around redeveloping Crenshaw in any meaningful way. So this property right now is being set to sold, or is set to be sold to DHF Partners and to Live Work. I believe that's how you would pronounce that. And these are major New York-based developers that claim they can help transform the mall into a 21st century lifestyle retail center. But I believe Live Work has ties to the Trump administration. But the purchase is facing fierce opposition from Downtown Crenshaw Rising, a community nonprofit that has a plan of its own to buy and redevelop stabilized businesses. That to preserve Crenshaw's economy, but the soul of Black Los Angeles itself. Essentially, the plan, which has the slightly pared down name of Downtown Crenshaw, is about building and keeping Black wealth within the community. It calls for reinventing the mall as an urban village that would build on some of the things that already existed and include retail, park space, offices, affordable housing, a boutique hotel, a cultural center, and production studios. Damian Goodman, a board member of Downtown Crenshaw Rising and the founder of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, has some quotes in here. He says, "At the end of the day, there's a bucket load of money to be made by gentrification. The challenge is making sure community isn't being pushed out. This is not about us getting more sit-down restaurants. It's about changing a whole system so that we can ensure our future. And it's all coming to a head." So he has some additional quotes, but he goes on to state the article goes on to state, what particularly rankles Mr. Goodman is that the mall's fate lies in the hands of a bank known for helping to finance Donald Trump's businesses. To add insult to industry, Live Work itself has a history of partnering with Mr. Trump's developer son-in-law, Jared Kushner, on his projects in Brooklyn and New York. To have this attempt at a neighborhood-driven redevelopment thwarted by institutions with ties to an administration that has come to stand in the minds of many Black folks for both racial oppression and capitalist overreach feels particularly painful. To end the article, Mr. Goodman says that he is betting that the momentum around anti-racism and, more important, around pro-Blackness will help Downtown Crenshaw Rising prevail and to establish in Crenshaw a new normal of agency and prosperity. That's exactly what people here have wanted for the last 30 years. We just didn't know what it looked like. So this article is an opinion piece from the New York Times today. Please check that out. The link is in the description. So that's about it. Those are my top 5 favorite articles for today, November 9th, 2020. Please, before you get out of here, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the Financial Juneteenth channel. And I look forward to hearing from you soon. Let us know in the comments what you think about these articles. And you all take care, be blessed, and have a wonderful day. All right, bye-bye. Today's video is brought to you by the Black Business School. At the Black Business School, we don't help you just climb the corporate ladder, we help you build your own as well. We provide a culturally relevant yet practical education in all things wealth building at an affordable price. So no matter if you want additional freedom in your day-to-day life, you would like to leave a legacy of generational wealth behind to your family and friends, or you just want additional security and stability going into your golden years of retirement, the Black Business School has courses and offerings for you. So head over to theblackbusinessschool.com to learn more. Take care and see you in class soon. Bye-bye.